in most cases, about 80% of the transactions that fall apart before closing are related to some type of financing. So she just eliminated that completely by accepting this cash offer. You know what I'm saying? Like
It was easy. She didn't have to worry.
She kept saying, okay, now tomorrow something was going to happen, is it really going to like that? I'm like, I promise it will.
Welcome to Aging in Style with Lori Williams, the podcast all about finding the silver lining no matter what life throws your way. I'm Lori Williams, an award-winning senior living expert, author, educator, and caregiver to my husband, Mark. Join me as I share insights, tips, and personal stories to help you navigate the world of senior housing, discover ways to pay for care, advocate for your loved ones, and most importantly, learn how to thrive, not just survive, as you age. Hi, welcome to Aging in Style. Today, we have a guest on who we've had several times in the past, over the past years that we have been doing the podcast. It's Tricia Spurrier, who is a realtor with Keller Williams, the Spurrier Group. And I've known Tricia forever. And I think what is unique about her and why I like to bring her on the podcast is that she's, simply not just a realtor, which, it's wonderful being a realtor, but she has also worked in senior living. And this is where I first met her, was actually working in senior living. So she has such good knowledge and experience. She can relate to seniors. She knows what it's like downsizing from a house they've been in for 40 years. She has worked with so many families. So that is why I keep bringing Tricia back for, what is this, number 3?
Think so.
Well, welcome, Tricia. I'm so happy to have you on the show again.
Thank you. You're not as happy as I am to be here.
So. Oh, really? I don't know.
I love spending time with you.
Aww.
And if we can help somebody, that's even better.
Absolutely. And we have been helping several people lately, which is great.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. So this is what we're going to talk about. And Tricia's going to give us an update on the real estate market because things have changed, as it does over time. And we're going to talk about a couple of people we've been able to help here recently. So why don't we start with what has changed in the market since the last time we talked was probably a year and a half ago, and it was a crazy seller's market here in Dallas. Like you said, it was like hair on fire.
I call it a crazy hair on fire seller's market.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between crazy hair on fire and seller's market. So it's different. And what really caused that crazy hair on fire was COVID and the interest rates being dropped so significantly, really artificially.
Yeah.
And that created a frenzy because the buyers were able to afford a home easily because the interest rate was so low.
Yeah.
And so it was crazy hair on fire.
Yeah.
And not to bore anybody, but it was fun. And it was a good time.
Well, I think people weren't they getting like in bidding wars and stuff?
Oh my gosh, we'd sell a house in a weekend with 15 offers trying to outbid each other.
Yeah.
We were selling properties off market because the people needed a home at that low interest rate. So they were giving away their grandkids and, no, just kidding. But it was crazy what people were doing to get that seller to agree to their offer.
Amazing. So things have changed. It is still a seller's market, but it's not like it was during that time. So tell us a little bit, and you had some really interesting tips, especially like the age of the average home buyer now. So why don't you share some of those facts with us, kind of what's going on with the market?
Okay. So right now, let me back up. With that crazy hair on fire seller's market, we had what was referred to as about a week's worth of inventory. And what that means is there was only a week's worth of inventory for all the people who wanted to buy. Okay, so there weren't enough homes on the market, and that's what created the seller's market. Crazy seller's market. Today, the amount of inventory is different, and that's really what's different. Today, we have in the Metroplex very much an average. I can't say this is every single neighborhood, but so I'm talking about wide DFW.
Yeah.
It's about 2 to 3 months worth of inventory. And what that means to all of us, the change is that homes are on the market a little longer than they were in Crazy Hair on Fire. And homes are still selling. That's something I want to make sure people know, because there's a lot of misinformation that's reported by the news. I don't care what channel, it's never accurate. And so the thing about this is there's still buyers that want to buy. People don't always just buy a home because it's fun. They typically are buying a home because they need to very badly or because they have to. And as long as we have people in our world that want to, they have life changes. That's what I call that, life changes. So what I mean by that is if someone gets married and a lot of times after that, they want to buy a house. They have children, they want a larger home, maybe with a pool, and now they need really good school districts, so they're going to move to find that. That's a purchase.
Or people moving to this area from,
exactly.
and Dallas is a big area for that.
You're absolutely right. And unfortunately, in the U.S., our divorce rate is about 50%. So when that happens, we have a lot of times have to sell that home, and those homeowners need to buy a new home. People, health changes happen and you got to downsize or want to downsize. Now, another trend that's happening is, in the last few years, you and I have seen where a senior adult, doesn't want to downsize. They're dreading the process. And I get it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm not saying it's not hard because we can make it a lot easier. But people are starting to want to downsize and simplify their life and be more of a minimalist versus a collector. But as long as those life changes continue to happen, you're always going to have a buyer for your home. Nobody talks about that. So I just wanted to make sure people know. It just might take a little bit longer to find the right buyer than it did in the previous market. That's really it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about the fun fact we were talking about the other day is that I was surprised when I learned that right now the average age of a buyer is 38 years old. And only, fun fact, only because when you and I were getting married and raising kids, the average age of a home buyer back then was like 22.
Yeah, and that's a
24.
first time.
First time,
And now it's 38.
Now it's
So
38.
people are waiting longer, maybe to settle down, or things are expensive now.
That's
so maybe they have to wait a little longer to have that down payment on a house. So,
Yeah, people actually, our world is changing a little bit. A different bit of a cultural influence is that many people are waiting longer to get married, waiting longer to have children. And what I mean by longer is just longer than you and I did.
Yeah.
We've got experience.
Well, I waited long. I was 32
Oh, okay.
and 40 with the second one. So I'm in there with the ones waiting.
Super. There's all different ages,
Yeah.
different reasons to buy. So when someone wants to sell their home, and a lot of times there's concern over, will there be a buyer? How long am I going to have to wait to get this house sold? And the only way to really know that is to have a realtor come to your home, have a walkthrough, do a bit of an assessment. And when we do that, we're looking at not your stuff, okay, not your personal belongings, but we're looking at the neighborhood. A little bit of curb appeal always helps, and the floor plan mostly, because that is what will tell us. So amenities, condition, location, that tells us how we can strategically, price a home. And a lot of people tell me it's almost every day somebody mentions Zillow.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So I had a little lady we're helping right now, her brother, told me, he says, well, I saw on Zillow that her home value was $550,000. And I said, that's not a bad place to start if you don't have a realtor. The fact about Zillow and third-party sites, they're not going to be accurate because Zillow has never been inside your property.
Exactly.
They don't know that you have updated your countertops to quartz. They don't know you had a full bath remodel. So they might be giving you less than what you really will be entitled to. Or they could be giving you way more than what it really is, and that's kind of a sticker shock too.
Yeah. So that's why you need to have a realtor like Tricia come. It doesn't cost you anything. She can come to your house and take a look and run the comps and all that stuff and tell you this is what you could potentially sell your house for, right?
Yes.
That's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, and the thing is, some people are a little nervous to talk to a realtor first because they have an idea that the realtor is going to come in their property and immediately say, oh, you need to change this, you need to update that, you need this and that, and we want to get your house on the market next week,
Yeah.
And especially for downsizing seniors, that doesn't feel good.
because they're already probably a little nervous. And a perfect example is we recently helped a lovely lady who had a change medically and just physically she could not stay in her house anymore. And there were some things that needed to be done to the house. I mean, it could have potentially gone on MLS, but she did not want to deal with all that came with that, with people looking at the house, having to have the house perfect. And she just wanted to be done and move on. She was moving to an independent living community. She was excited about it. So I introduced her to Tricia, and that's what happened.
I'll tell you how that went. So the first time I met her, she let me do a home assessment. She walked me around, showed me what was important to her. And then I did what I call a deep dive into the comparables so that I could give her a suggested list price should we go on the MLS. And that also included a few little updates that would make more sense for her if she went on the market. Again, this market being different than previously.
Yeah.
In 2021, I could have taken her house as it was and I would have said, don't do a thing. We will sell this quickly. Now I have to change that perspective a little bit to, relate to the current market. And so for her, it was pretty small, insignificant, not very expensive. But she told me, just like you said, she said, Tricia, I don't want to do showings. I don't want to do an open house. You're going to want to do an open house every single weekend. I have a dog. What am I going to do with my dog? And she said, I've already found where I want to live. Here's what she said. I want to just snap my fingers and be in my new place.
Yeah.
Right? How many times do we hear that?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Just be down with this messy in the middle.
I know, because it is. You have to, you think about if you've been in your house, I'll use myself as an example. I've been in my house for 28 years and I'm trying to start downsizing some of the closets because I hear these stories all the time from people. And I'm like, I don't want to be in this mess of trying to downsize, but you accumulate a lot of crap and, 28 years, imagine 40, 50 years. So you just kind of become immune to it. Like my game room, I don't ever go up there. There's a lot of stuff in there that needs to go, but I just, out of sight, out of mind. But, it is overwhelming when like this lady was at a point she really needed to move and she did not want to think about having to do all these extra stuff. She just wanted to get out of there.
And so once we determined what might be a few little things to consider to go on the market and what that price would look like for her, brought that back to her the next day and she said, see, I don't even care if I don't get that. I just want to be done. And you had already told me that she was willing to consider investor offers, but we didn't want her to be taken advantage of.
Exactly. And that is something that's very important to me. And I don't trust just anyone with my senior clients because we know that the biggest investment for the majority of our seniors, and myself included, is our house. And so you want every single penny out of that house because that's going to pay for your old age. And I just never want someone to get taken advantage of. And so I trust Tricia because she has investors that she brought in and she gave it to this lady both ways. Here is with an investor buying it. Here's if you do a few updates. And then she made the decision, which was just to sell to an investor.
She was super thrilled with her offer.
She was.
And I think she moved the next week, we had gotten her a no fee lease back so she needed the money from the sale of her home to be able to pay the movers to get her in her new place. So we were able to easily, get a lease back and no charge. I think it was like 2 weeks. So she closed, received her proceeds that day, and then she moved 2 weeks later. And of course, she did a great job. You probably referred her to the mover, I think.
I did. Yeah. There's people who will actually pack up your stuff for you and go through it. And so there's one we use a lot, but she's always busy. So there was a new lady who's come into it. So we referred her and she did all the packing and did a fantastic job. And then we have a mover that we love and referred to him too and just took care of everything for her.
Yeah.
And they do everything for you. You have to pay for it, of course, but they can either just pack everything and move it or pack, unpack, hang pictures on your wall. Everything's just set up. And I think she did a little of both. Like she brought some stuff over. She had these, I went to visit her after she moved in, and she had these really pretty teapots that she had put up above the cabinet. And she said she had set all that up herself.
That's great.
So yeah.
You know, for her, like we're talking about movers for just a second. Senior movers that specialize in helping seniors move, because it's not, this selling of your home is not the same for a senior as it is for us when we're in our 30s.
Absolutely.
There's so many more considerations that you have to make a lot of decisions about. And then the movers that have that specialized senior service, they make a huge difference too. We were talking about pack, move, unpack, hang the artwork, hang the TV. I don't know, they set up your coffee pot to go off in the morning.
Yeah.
What time do you want your coffee pot to go off? And also with that, I call that the magic move.
Yeah.
And I don't know why a senior move company hasn't taken that from me, because
That's a great idea. The magic
Right?
move.
The magic move.
And it's so personalized, because maybe when you're in your 30s, you just want to get things moved, just pack, move. I don't want to even have a conversation with the person doing it. But a senior wants to talk about each item, and share memories. And that happens a lot, not just with the people coming to pack, but the mover. And one of the movers we use a lot, his name is Miles, and he is just an angel on earth. He's moved some stuff for me. And he will sit and have conversations with them about their stuff, because this is, it's emotional for a senior who you've been in a house 40 years. It's going to be emotional for me when I leave my house, because you have all these memories in this house. And I think it's so beautiful that someone is patient enough to sit there and listen to stories about, when my husband and I built this house, or we bought the teapot or whatever, and just hear the stories.
I love that he takes the time, because I know you and I both do that.
Yeah.
But I can kind of say I selfishly do that too, because I enjoy learning from other people. And they've lived a longer life than me. They have more life experience. And I love to hear the stories about teacups or teapots,
I do too.
And it also teaches us along the way. Like you said, you've got a game room upstairs. You need to tackle it, but not today.
Yeah.
And not today becomes the future quicker than we think sometimes. So for her, it worked out beautifully. She had you to find the right living environment based on her wants and needs, her geographic preferences, and she was very
specific where she wanted to be.
Yes, and her financial parameters. And then we were able to help her with a very quick close. So that closing for her was 2 weeks, and it was cash.
That's awesome.
There's no worry about contingencies falling apart. And in most cases, about 80% of the transactions that fall apart before closing are related to some type of financing. So she just eliminated that completely by accepting this cash offer. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just
it was easy. She didn't have to worry.
She kept saying, okay, now tomorrow something was going to happen, is it really going to like that? I'm like, I promise it will. Finally, when she got into her place, she was like, I can't believe it. Everything you and Lori said, it absolutely came.
Because it sounded too good to be true, but it did work out. And we're not saying everyone is, needs to do it this way with an investor rather than MLS. But for some people, it works best. And I think it's great to present it as an option. And I think it's good for people to know that this is a possibility for them too.
Options. We're always looking in real estate to provide options for our clients, no matter who we represent, because nobody wants to be stuck and having to do a huge, transaction like that because they don't have options. So this does allow us to have options. And to your point, the majority of our seniors, they are going on the MLS. I don't know. I don't have a number for that, but I would say 85% of them maybe are going on the MLS. But to know you have trusted investors for when that's more appropriate. And let me just say too, not all investors are created equally.
Exactly. And that's why I trust you.
Thank you. But there are some investors, most of us get little postcards, saying, I'll buy your house for cash and easy. And not to get too, technical here, but there are some ways that they leverage themselves to get a lower sales price than what you were expecting. Okay. But with investors that we have vetted and have worked with for over 10 years, the price they give you for your home is the price you will close at, because there's no option period, which is when inspections usually happen in that option period. So for other investors, they'll tell you, for example, I'll leave you $400,000 for your house, and now we're going to have an inspection. And then sometimes there are legitimate, inspection items that need attention. Sometimes they're not, and they make it look that way. And now instead of $400,000, they're going to offer you $350,000, $325,000, and you were anticipating $400,000.
Okay.
So the big difference here is these investors that we vet and represent, they don't have an option period. They don't have an inspection. So again, the number they give you,
that's what you're getting.
$400,000, that's what you're getting in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
So it is about protecting people.
It is. And I am very, as you are too, very, very protective of our older adults.
And I'm sure there's great investors. I just haven't met them yet, so there's probably lots more of great people. I just am most familiar with
the ones that you use.
That's worked successfully.
Yeah. So another example, and like Tricia said, 85% of people will be listing their house on the MLS, the traditional way to sell it. But this is just an option that, we're seeing for several of our clients actually. And we have a lady right now who is making that decision because she's a widow. She's ready to move on to an assisted living. And she has I think it's a pretty good sized house, right?
2,200.
Yeah. That's and it's an older home. Things were not updated. There's a lot of things that need to happen. So we are actually, the inspector looked at that one today. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen there and what's going to make the most sense for her.
Yeah. And that's a great way to do it, like we are, is having the investor make an offer before you do anything else. Like, don't make any repairs. Don't try to paint the living room, just have us out there, and the investor will make an offer. And if our clients don't like that offer, then we know we got to probably do a little bit of work and get you on the market. But the good news is that doesn't cost anything. There's no obligation. The offer comes very quickly, so you can make a decision and move on one way or the other.
Yeah, I love that. I think those were the main topics that we wanted to hit on. And just, again, I do want to reiterate, by having a realtor, whether Tricia or, if you're in some other area, someone else, that there's no charge for them to come out and take a look at your house and do all this information, fact finding about the house. And there's no charge for that. So why wouldn't you have them come out?
No charge and no obligation.
Yeah.
I will tell you, some of my colleagues are a little more, I don't want to say it to be ugly.
Maybe pushy. So, and that's the thing that especially with seniors, you do not have to sign anything.
Right.
It is free for them to come out and tell you this. But if someone starts trying to really push you into signing and going with them, you say no.
Yeah. Say no until you know more, for sure.
Exactly.
I'll say this too, in case there's anybody that this might be helpful for. I do downsizing seminars and talk to seniors, downsizing, and adult children all day long, just like you. Our clientele is the same.
Yeah.
What I hear the most, biggest questions I get asked are, what is my home value? Can I sell as is? What repairs do I need to make, if any? And I always, if you are thinking that, or somebody that's been thinking along those lines, get those questions answered. Call me. I'll come out to the home. We'll do a home evaluation. Again, no pressure. And then at least you'll know you're collecting more data, and now you have answers versus questions. And that really helps people to make better decisions for themselves.
Yeah. And it is all about education. We have something coming up. I think it's either July or August, we were talking about putting this on the books, where this lady who we help moved to independent living. So their community wants us all to kind of be together and talk about, like, here's the process. Here is step by step how it works. So here is the lady. Here is Lori. Lori introduced her to Tricia, and just all the way how it worked, putting all the pieces of the puzzle together and getting her moved in, so easily, pretty much stress-free.
For her.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And she has told me repeatedly that was so easy.
Yeah, she's still surprised.
Yeah. So I'll share information when we're going to be out at different places talking about that, because I think it's very powerful to see that, hear the story and see in person, like, this is how easy it can be, all the pieces that can come together.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So-
it's still a great time to sell your home.
Yeah.
I think that's the message, really. Well, so many messages in the podcast today. But, you know, in the Metroplex, home sales are up 4.7% from last year. So your sales price is going to be higher than last year. And even the home sales themselves are up 15%. And that's just fact that there are buyers. So if I can share knowledge with a downsizing senior or anybody listening today, is if you're thinking about selling, we will have a buyer for you. And that's proof in the data as well as our experience.
You know what's interesting? I want to ask you this because I've noticed a little trend in my neighborhood. So I'm in a I guess an older neighborhood. The houses are all like 28, 29 years old. And we've all raised our kids there. And there's a few young families still, like on my street, there are throughout the neighborhood. But my neighbor across the street sold their house last year. And the buyer was a retired couple who were moving here to be near their kids and grandkids. My next door neighbor's house just sold to a lady from, I think, Iowa, grandma, moving here to be close to the grandkids. Is that a trend that you're seeing, maybe especially in Dallas, where so many people move here for work?
For sure. Many people, many seniors who are downsizing mostly, but maybe not even downsizing, but moving here to be closer to family. And there was a home that we had for sale. It was on the market for like 3 days. This is very recently. On the third day, we had an offer. I'm like, wow, that's great. So did a little digging and asked the buyer agent, you know, hey, what can you tell me about your client, if anything? They're not obligated to, but I like to know if I can. And she said the reason my client is quick to act to make an offer on your listing is because she's relocating here to the Metroplex to be close to kids. And this house is down the street from the kids' home.
Yeah.
And you can bet that person was willing to pay what it takes, you know, to get the house under contract because of her motivation to be near kids.
Yeah.
And what a blessing that is to be able to see so many people getting to be with their family.
Yeah.
And not just Christmas, you know. So yes, that is a trend that's happening. A lot of seniors in the U.S. are selling their home somewhere else, coming here and either downsizing with your help, getting to the right location, or making
buying a
small
house.
purchase.
Yeah.
But it is great about getting close to kids.
Yeah. And I think these are, I mean, they're seniors still, but they're in their 60s. So probably I would say we see more of the ones who are in their 70s, 80s who are moving to senior living. And then also there's several who are moving in with their kids. So, and I know like my neighbors who moved, that was their whole motivation, to move to a 1-story house with sort of like a second suite for her mother. So are you seeing a lot of that too?
Generational living is picking up. As a matter of fact, I met a new family 2 weeks ago. They live in Bedford. And they wanted me to look at the mom's house and the daughter's house. They're like 2 streets from each other. Wanted me to give advice and opinion on which one to sell and which one to move into together.
Oh, wow.
And just today, the daughter called me. I haven't called her back yet. I'm fixing to, but she called me and left me an address for a home she wants me to look into for her as a purchase for both of them instead of moving into one or another's home.
Oh, wow.
They got lots of options.
Lots of options.
People have lots of options.
Yeah.
You just got to ask.
Exactly.
Like, hey, what can I do to XYZ? We'll have answers.
Yeah.
We always do.
Very cool. Tricia does. She always has answers. Well, Tricia, I love having you on, and I know I could talk to you all day about this because it is fascinating, and we do share a love for seniors and doing the right thing for them. And, you know, like I said, Tricia and I've worked together in the past and known her for forever. So thank you, as always, for giving us an update on the real estate market.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me. It's always a good time.
Yeah, of course. So you can go and find all kinds of information on my website, all the different podcast episodes we've done. We'll tag the past 2 that we have with Tricia too, so that you can see how things have changed. If that interests you, I think it's interesting to see how it changes. And my website's LoriWilliams-SeniorServices.com. And please share this podcast with your friends, families, neighbors, everyone. Just share it. And be sure to follow us so that you will be updated every Friday when a new podcast drops. Thanks so much. We will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.